And as the world celebrates the Women's History Month, women in South Africa have joined also in the celebrations. The gathering now comes at the time where this year South Africa is celebrating 30 years of democracy. However, women around the world are still facing challenges. Let's now take you live with our SABC News International editor, Sophie Mokoena, who is in Houghton in Johannesburg. Sophie, a very good afternoon to you. There's a lot of women that have achieved, there's a lot rather that women have achieved. However, there are still challenges. How important is this gathering?
Well, indeed, Alicia, we are still here at the Houghton, as I pointed out earlier on. Today, Gugu Motlanthe, the former First Lady, and here to honor women, particularly at the time where the world is observing International History Month in relation to the women emancipation and their contribution in empowering their different countries. But I think for me what was powerful was the speech delivered by Minister Nchaveng, who spoke about what we can do as women in the country to change the lives of other women. We don't need lots of money and lots of resources. In a small way, every woman can help another woman to live a better life. And as you can hear behind me, Ringo Madlingos is singing and women dancing. But let me be in conversation with the minister on serious matters, particularly pertaining to women. Minister, as we hear this beautiful music, as we celebrate Women's Month or the Women's History Month, women in other parts of the world are not able to do what we did here this afternoon. South Africa is playing a very important role to try and assist women in different parts of the world by bringing peace. You talk Sudan, you talk DRC, you talk Middle East. How do we ensure that even those women in those countries are able to observe a day like this?
Thank you. Like I was saying in the address, human rights are universal for everyone. And we, in our own part as a country, we are actively involved in ensuring that the genocide in Gaza stops. And now there's an order for Rafah. We want that to stop because the people who are dying are women and children. What we can do as South African women in that specific case is to help with raising medical supplies to make sure that the Doctors Without Borders are able to access the areas and treat. We are seeing other countries coming back to fund the UN mission for refugees in Gaza and hopefully in Rafah. They're coming back when they'd pulled out. For us, it's important to mobilize international society as South African women and say the killing of women and children who are not party to the war of Israel and Hamas cannot be victims. It needs to be stopped. But they don't have access to food. They don't have. So we need to also arm the antenna in terms of access to humanitarian aid, not the airdrops that are being done that are ending up killing people, but to make sure that trucks can drive in. There must be a ceasefire for the trucks to go in. If you come back to Sudan, and that's why our president has been engaging with both parties to make sure we can negotiate, facilitate a mediation of sorts so that the parties can come to the table, because it's only when there's peace that women and children can be safe, they can be able to exercise their rights. Currently, women and children are being killed. In my address, I spoke about fewer women dying in maternity, during maternity period, fewer children dying in infancy. That will not happen in Gaza, that will not happen in Sudan, that will not happen in the Eastern DRC where there are no services, that will not happen in Ukraine. So it's important that as women of South Africa, we lead in the international front of calling for humanitarian aid, but also for calling for ceasefires, and also settlements of dispute in a peaceful settlements. And that's the role South Africa is doing, where we need to participate in peace mission or in security and stabilization mission. We are participating and we support the initiatives of our government to make sure that we bring peace in Africa in particular and in the rest of the world and for the people of Palestine.
Let's talk about Ukraine. You have attended quite a number of meetings, particularly in relation to the peace summits outside South Africa. I'm talking in Europe, but Russia hasn't been party to those meetings. And the president is engaging President Zelensky. And we saw yesterday the message congratulating President Putin. Where are we in trying to assist the two parties to find one another?
Our position is that the peace that must be found, it cannot be found by Ukraine alone or by supporting Ukraine alone. We must facilitate a dialogue between Ukraine and Russia. And if you remember the 10-point plan of the African leaders, it included a dialogue and it included creating conditions for meaningful dialogue between the two parties. We are quite insistent on that, to say it's time that Russia comes to the table in the negotiations, in the summit that discusses peace. You can't discuss peace in Ukraine without the full participation of Russia, and that's why we have made sure that, remember how South Africa has been engaged in the returning of Russian children, of Ukrainian children from Russia to Ukraine. We have been facilitating the issues of the prisoners of war as part of the enabling conditions to ensure that there is a brother and brother engagement, neighbor and neighbor engagement. People tend to forget that Kiev was the capital of the USSR before it was Moscow. And this is literally same people. And we're saying engage with each other. We are here to facilitate the engagement and the conditions for such an engagement.
President Zelensky, there were reports that he wants to visit South Africa.
President Zelensky wants an engagement with African leaders within the African continent, and with those mechanisms are in the works. But our view is that there have been too many engagements that excluded Russia. We need to see if this engagement in Africa cannot include Russia as a full participant.
Thank you so much, Minister, for your time. Quite a powerful speech, particularly when you spoke about what you learned from people like Mezanele Mbeki.
And now Mezanele Mbeki has been an inspiration, and she continues to watch over me, what my mistakes I make. She calls me to order. When I do well, she commends me. I continue to engage with such women because there's no point of reinventing the wheel. They've led before us. She was the first lady of South Africa. Remember Nelson Mandela, at the time he was president, he did not have a wife, so there was no first lady. She was the first lady of the country. We talk about everything, the conduct of a minister in public, the conduct of a minister in relation to others, and they are a great wealth of knowledge, and at their age it's important that we start to learn from them and suck from that wealth, because soon they will be departed. And I treasure really the engagement. I also treasure the support that Sis Gugu gives when we called out for this food garden project to say we don't want to reinvent the wheel. She says by all means, yeah, it is. We engage with Mayor Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka on the work that her foundation is doing, because like I was saying during the address, I don't have to do that which is Kumbuzo. We must support the initiatives that are going on so that we can make more impact. But we have a tendency as women of wanting to do my own. My own does not mean better. My own can be better if it's in partnership with others. And as I said, 30 years of our freedom and democracy, our theme is democracy, partnership and growth. We can only grow in partnership.
Thank you so much, Minister, for your time. That was the Minister of Security. You know very well that she has been in and out of the country, particularly attending those important engagements in relation to the Ukraine-Russia conflict, but also speaking about the situation in the Middle East. We are told right now there are talks, and it looks like the ceasefire talks have started. On the other hand, we saw the Secretary of State of the United States of America arriving in Egypt today, and I think engagement is continuing so that before perhaps the end of this important International Women History Month, we can see women of Gaza being supported and finding peace and being able to take a nap during the day and sleep at night without those bombs dropping every hour. Back to you in studio, Alicia, as I leave you with Ringo, the entertaining women here.
Thank you so much to our international editor there, Sophie Mokoena, out in Houghton for us at, of course, the Women's History Month celebration, which coincides with Human Rights Day.